Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and thank you for joining this special Open Voice Network Insiders Briefing. We're going to have the great pleasure of speaking here with Oita Coleman and about a number of topics, but certainly starting with her visit to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and their Voice Symposium in February. But let's, first of all, just a note of thanks to those of you who have tuned in today. And Nathan, if you could change the slide, please. This is a thanks, is that in your raising your hand and lending us your name and supporting the Open Voice Network through the past months and years, thank you. Thank you. This is the first of a number of steps that we will be taking to turn the value back to you, to say thanks in tangible ways, to share the knowledge that we're gaining, to share with you the connections we have, to be listening, as we always want to do, to the friends, the ambassadors, and the industry advisors, the Open Voice Network. So from all of us who work on this day to day, to those of you who have lent your voice and lent us your name and your very good names, Dankeschön and merci and grazie, thank you. Xie for those in China. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. And again, the first of a number of these within 2023. Nathan, let's go to the next slide, if we would. We always are the Open Voice Network. And so we just need to say these things. This meeting is being recorded. As you know, this meeting has started on time, and in our customary way, it'll end on time. And this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the antitrust guidelines of the Linux Foundation. And should you have questions about that, send me a note on chat and we can get that to you. Let's also go then, what are we going to cover? In February, Oita went to a surprisingly sunny day in Seattle. Sunny day, Seattle, February, kind of strange, and represented the Open Voice Network at an all-day symposium on voice at the Gates Foundation. And we'll talk about that. We'll also ask Oita to give us some insight, as so many of you have been supportive of what we're terming the TrustMark initiative. And this is what's going on, this is when we're going to launch it, this is what's happening, and this is how you can help. And then make sure that, perhaps by the half hour, we can open the mics to everyone. Comments, questions, your criticisms, you're all welcome to join in. During the conversation, please just post your questions in chat here in Zoom. We're a family, we're friends. Post your questions there. Nathan will raise them, and we'll pause for a few times to have a chance for those questions as we have this great conversation with Oita. But with that, without further ado, let's Oita Coleman. As I said, on a sunny day in February in Seattle, which is very rare, represented the Open Voice Network at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, an all-day voice symposium. She was one of 30 individuals who was part of that conversation. And Oita, let's just start with this. I mean, we read about the Gates Foundation. They do remarkable work, but a real focus on inequities, on disease prevention, on issues of poverty, and with a worldwide scope. I mean, why voice? What led the Gates Foundation to be asking that question and be bringing in voice experts from around the world?
Thank you, John, for this opportunity, and looking forward to this conversation, and really thanks for all of you who are joining us today. So the purpose of the symposium was to bring together members of the foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and those who are doing research or working in the voice space together to help kind of level set their knowledge of what was happening in the industry. The event that I attended on February 15th was the second event. Back in December, the foundation leadership came together and to prioritize their projects for the upcoming year, and to look at what are the gaps, what were the things that they were missing, what things were they not focusing on in order to advance and provide more support for the communities that they support. And there are a couple of things that came from that, is that they are focusing, it's particularly on the areas that they're calling Global South, which is Africa and South Asia. And looking at how to improve the lives and livelihoods of those communities. One of the things that was very clear is the digital divide. We always talk about, the digital divide, but looking at it from the perspective of the AI digital divide, to provide those communities with access to technology. The simplest thing that we all take for granted is a smartphone. How can communities, families, individuals, providing them with just access to voice AI, voice technology via smartphones as just a common level the playing field to provide services to them. And so that was really the focus of why they wanted to bring together people to talk about the challenges. What is possible? What is available? You look at the infrastructure that's available in those areas. What's available? How can they provide services? What can public-private partnerships do to bridge the gap, to provide those opportunities to those communities?
So South Asia, and digital divide, but now they're talking about conversational AI. They're talking about voice.
Yes.
In regions that I think the term you've used, Oita, and taught me is with underrepresented languages, with
yes.
dozens, hundreds of languages in these areas. But why voice technology? Why conversational AI? How does that fit into this?
One of the things that we in Open Voice Network, we've always talked about is voice is a natural, is an interface. It is a natural interface. It is an easy interface for people to use in these communities that they're serving. There's some large parts of the population who can't read or write. And so the ability to provide these services via voice just kind of brings that forward. And so it was a natural transition to be able to provide services to address that divide within it easily. And so some, like you said, with the challenges of voice, which the focus of the day was to talk through, like the low resource languages. Think about it from the perspective that in India, there are 22 official languages that are supported. Does the technology support, is there enough training data to support all of those languages? Is the technology available to provide the support for those? And so getting past those challenges of voice recognition, of model training, or providing the tools and technology. And so that's just the basics of the challenge. But then there are the challenges that we as Open Voice Network that we talk about is overcoming challenges in things like data collection, data and model bias, consent, transparency, and trust. Once you get past the technology play, then you still have to think through the things that we, be working with the Ethical Use Task Force or Privacy and Security Work Group. Those are the things that they, on that day in February, that they wanted to focus on primarily. How to develop pathways and have conversations to overcome challenges in those areas of data collection, data and model bias, consent, transparency, and trust.
Let's come back to that here in a moment, but Oita, let's just start. How did all this happen? I mean, what was the process for you getting and being part of this conversation, and as we're going to learn, being part of an ongoing conversation? What happened?
Well, one day in December, I received an email, and it says an invitation from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I honestly thought it was spam. So I just thought it was. I looked at, I read it again, and it was an invitation that to come and educate them on these topics. And so it started out with this event is happening, are you interested? That was just it. And then as I provided more details, as John said, do you know anything about this? You didn't know anything. So like, let's see. It was, they had just reached out or look across their networks to find people that they wanted to bring in for that event to speak to these issues. So
it would be like receiving a phone call from the White House or the Publishers Clearing, you've won something. No, remarkable. And you responded and they made the arrangements.
Yeah,
But they did ask you to present on some specific topics. And Oita, speak to that and your role within the day.
So I was able, it was an entire day that was set up for, again, the members of the foundation leadership, as well as those who were able to participate virtually. So the day started out it was an optional thing, and they asked me if I wanted to attend, and it was called Lad Fest. And so Lad Fest was what provided and again, more education on what was happening, and there were keynote speakers on various topics of the digital divide, unlocking and unbiasing data. There were many speakers from other areas, and then there was a digital showcase where companies were able to demonstrate some of their tools that they're working on to help with this with voice technology in these communities, like Google's 1000 language initiative. They had a demo, Amplio, Grace Health app, and then Microsoft has a product called Carya, and there's AI for Barat, Decodus. So various organizations had a showcase of what the technology that they were working on. OpenAI had a demo area where you could play with the technology. And then, so that was in the morning, and that was really beneficial for me to see what was happening across the landscape and made very good contacts there. And then the afternoon session was a closed session. So there were 30 people invited to this session, and there were 3 presentations that were given. So there were three presenters, one being on the topic of data collection. And the presenter there was Chirag Shah of University of Washington. And then on the subject of data and model bias, Ignatius Ezunaki of Lancaster University presented. And then on the subject of, I was asked to present on the subject of consent, transparency, and trust. And so from the Open Voice Network, I represented Open Voice Network. And so I was one of the 3 presenters in that afternoon session.
So consent, privacy, and trust, and certainly a bit of background that you could bring from the work of the Ethical Use Task Force.
Yes.
The advice of many of you on this call. How did we do? How did you do? I mean, what was the response to the work that you presented?
It was very well received. especially the work, and again, the work that we've done across the privacy and security work group and the ethical use task force. Really, the information that we've put together with our white papers and the research that that we've published and are working on. We're well poised to provide information, relevant information on those topics. Especially the topic that I think several of you have seen this image, and we can provide it, was what can you learn from voice data? What can you learn relative to the biomarkers, biometrics of health, mental health, physical condition, ages. And so that information was well received, and folks that I never really thought about it, that you could really learn that much from voice. And that really spoke to the topic of trust and then consent and transparency. Those topics are relevant to us and we think about it, but the factors that they really reminded us with these communities that they're serving is, while those concepts of consent and privacy make sense to us, if again, going back to providing just the basics of a smartphone to have access to technology, often there is one phone that the entire family shares. There could be one smartphone that the community shares. And if you're talking about privacy and consent, does every individual can't consent to the use, because these tools are being used ideally for financial services. The tools are being used to access to healthcare. And so while we are having these discussions here with our, our mindsets, we have to think about other communities and how the policy, how the guidelines and things that we present, how they resonate with those communities, and being aware of the further challenges that they will experience as we talk through these guidelines. So that was a very rich conversation related to that.
So voice being envisioned, back to kind of the original thesis for gathering people together,
Yeah.
Voice being envisioned as a bridge that can cross that digital divide. It's natural, it's easy, one doesn't, literacy is not an issue potentially there, but you mentioned and just spoke to the, dependencies, barriers, or maybe lack of issues and, transparency and consent, et cetera. What were the major dependencies, the major barriers that the group was identifying for, say, next steps? What's in
so there were, after the presentations, they broke everyone up into 3 different groups where we had ideation sessions to talk about the different challenges, using different personas to talk through identify the challenges, identify future pathways for addressing those. So for each of those topics, data collection, data model bias, consent, transparency, there were 3 different groups that talked through those examples. And so that was kind of how the symposium ended, with the ideation session and synthesizing all of the information. And then from there would be developed next steps of what are the next steps for addressing those, and that's kind of setting up future conversations for that.
If you had 2 or 3 things that those of us, we work in North America, we work in Europe, we work in the developed world, 2 to 3 takeaways, Oita, from that as you were flying back home that really stuck with you, that you would share with this group, things that we could learn together?
The things that I would say are really resonated, and it wasn't just with the afternoon session, but it was the morning session, and the topics or voice being part of the digital public good, being part of digital public infrastructure, that voice being a key piece to that, and that this, DPGs, DPIs would be how we would create value and provide the technology broadly. And that actually, by way of this, that would be one of the key drivers for interoperability. And using the example, for example, of we are Open Voice Network, we're working with a community, a governmental, the government that is trying to deploy voice services to their constituents across each of the different bureaus, each of the government organizations broadly, and they're leveraging voice technology. So I was excited to hear them receive a shout out from this stage of a surprise that we are on the forefront of those conversations, and that it was the light bulb that went off to me, that is a path to interoperability. Because if you put these within this infrastructure of addressing the needs of your citizens, and all agencies have to talk together, you have to share the credentials, you have to be able to transition from one voice agent to another, that is addressing interoperability and can help us move forward. So that was one.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Now, shout out to our colleagues here on the phone from Estonia. Hey,
yes, it was yes, hearing that and just knowing, and the validation of the work and the partnerships that we're developing with them was really it was very rewarding. And the other thing, I'll be just quick, it's just about the other takeaway is Open Voice Network, we're in the right space to educate and advocate for the use of voice technology. We are, just conversational AI. I know this is broad, and even though the day was focused, primarily on voice, we know that concepts of generative AI and large language model, they're very important and critical, transformation forward. But we still have to remember those, the have-nots that don't even have the basics. And so as we, I kind of look at it as, as a relay team, where there's always the person who's reaching forward for the baton, or who's going forward, but they're reaching back for the baton. That's kind of see us in that that middle leg of we want to move forward, but we still have to reach behind and make sure that we are kind of moving things forward within the industry on both ends.
Moving things forward, and we're going to turn to that whole education advocacy. But first, perhaps one final question on the Gates Foundation, and then if you have questions of Oita regarding the Gates Foundation participation, put them in chat, and we'll take a moment to ask those. But Oita, they're giving us a big vision. I feel like maybe all of us feel this way, and, raise your hand. We're in the weeds day to day, and we're worried about, what's the market share? Can we make this work? What's monetizing? What's the value proposition? How are the big platforms working? And here the Gates Foundation is saying this should be part of kind of the digital ecosystem. This should be just part of life.
Yeah, should be
this voice interface and voice interface to so many data sources. I mean, it's a big vision that is both refreshing and challenging. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is, and it really goes to the fulfillment of our mission is to bring all voices, all dialects, all languages forward, right? and we have a community of people who want to work together to address the issues. And so I do think that one of the things that I have valued from my experience with Open Voice Network and meeting meeting so many different people, is just the conversations around addressing the challenges, you know, broadly. That's why we're coming together as an open community, is to not just focus individually on our own silos, but just bringing these bright, brilliant minds who are on this call together to try to address and see what we can all do collectively to bring everyone forward. And I just am excited about where we're going collectively.
It's
To
well,
address
it's exciting to see all the brain power that's here on the Zoom call. Oh, wait, let's turn. First of all, Nathan, any questions in the chat? Any topics to bring up here?
None that I see so far. Do we want to turn it over to the group? Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Feel free to open up your mics if you have any questions of Oita. We'll also have an open mic session here at the end, but let's go. From Simon. Simon, thanks. How do we bring unwritten languages into the voice space? Simon,
yeah.
My God. Okay.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. That is a very good question. And the topics, those are conversations, and that was one of the challenges that was identified. Looking at Janet's answer to that, yes, we have. There are so many languages that they are identifying that could potentially be lost languages, because there's not a lot of things that's written down. And so there is a danger, and there are projects out there that are trying to address the preservation of these languages to be able to bring them forward. So great question, and it is a challenge that that's important to address.
To follow up to that, I'm wondering if LLMs can be taught on text. Can they also be taught on waveforms? And then they could learn the spoken language from audio.
Doug, was that you raising your hand there? Was that your question? Did I capture that?
Was that Simon?
Simon, thank you.
Simon.
I don't know, Oita, I'm not smart enough to answer that.
I think that is something for the industry to figure out, but I do think that is something that is probably very, very possible as an answer. Yes.
And Simon, you know, with a respect for your background and leadership, just give us your 30-second thought. Yeah. How close could we be to that? What do you think?
You got to think that it's possible, because LLMs just take text and turn it into vectors and turn that into numbers, and then see what numbers match up with what numbers, and that becomes understanding. So waveforms are no different, I would think. You vectorize it, turn it into numbers, and then you learn from that, and it becomes understanding.
Yeah.
I think the challenge would become putting the human in the loop, and having, how do you annotate waveforms for understanding?
Yeah.
Brenda, you had a comment. Brenda, Doug, thanks. Brenda, you had a comment just about that. Simon, thank you.
Just to say that LLMs are not necessarily a new I mean, they're new, sort of a new use case, but not necessarily don't need necessarily a new technological development aspect on this point, because existing voice assistants are already learning from spoken word, in the sense of that's how they have to overcome accents, different languages, of course, but a lot of the immediate issues are around accents and vocabulary and those kinds of things. So they already learn from that. So if an LLM is learning from content, and then its output can either be text or spoken, or I don't know if there's another option, visual, like images. It can be images as well. So the LLM aspect is not, it is about learning from the content, learning how to create content, and that content can be delivered in different media. So it could be delivered in a written program, in a texted format, in a spoken format, all of those things would be incorporated with that.
Yeah.
Brenda, thank
Bring
you.
together those different aspects, I guess, is what I was saying.
Right.
Thank you. One more question. Kieran, if you wouldn't mind just opening your mic and just sharing what you had in chat, and then we'll move to our next topic. But Kieran, please.
Thanks, John and Oita. So more a thought. There is a Government of India run initiative called Bhashini, which is in the process of collecting local vernacular, almost crowdsourcing inputs from different regions of the country for collecting the corpus for NLP, NLU, eventually TTS, STT, everything. So I think with the Gates Foundation's focus on that side of the world, maybe it would be a good opportunity to explore.
All right.
And you had the spelling of that, Kieran, in the chat, I believe. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's
Thank
one of
you.
the follow-ups and is for us, and we had started a conversation yesterday, is what are the opportunities for us for collaboration where we can provide our guidance and learn from other groups of what they're doing to be able to move this forward. So I appreciate, Sam, your question and starting this conversation. It is something that how can we help, bring, at least if nothing else, we are an organization who can bring people together to start having these discussions and figuring out how to address the problems.
John LeGrand had a
Oita, one-
comment as well.
Yeah, one final question from JT. About accessibility, Oita. How much was that brought up? Was that discussed?
It was a big part of it. It was a big part of it. Just ease of technology, accessibility, those, again, vulnerable populations, those who have difficulty. So that was a big part of the conversation. There was one of the demos was from a company, Amplio, in providing very, very easy to use voice. It's a voice assistant, virtual voice assistant. That's something that was being reviewed and deployed across some of the communities. There was kind of a box of ease of a communication to at least provide access to basic information, government information, health information. So it was addressing the digital divide, but it would also be a way to kind of start looking at ease of use tools and accessibility. So I think it was.
Well, Dr. Yah, you just put a comment there, and we're going to emphasize that because Dr. Yah was also, and it should be mentioned, from Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
I think she brought the sunshine.
She brought the sunshine, but she
brought
was
the
also there
sunshine
with
tonight.
Oita. Dr. Yah, thank you for that. And yes, Oita is amazing. We agree, as are you. Let's turn to another topic here. And Simon, thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. We're going to Oita, let's just give a preview to the family here. Let's talk about the TrustMark initiative and what that is. If those of you who, you're part of the family here, if you haven't heard about that, get a primer on that, and then the steps we're going to be taking on launching that over the next several weeks and months. Oita, please.
All right, so save the date, March the 29th. That is the official launch date of the TrustMark initiative of the Open Voice Network is the official name. And so what this is it is considered an educational and awareness framework to help those. Two years ago, we published our first ethical guidelines white paper. We published privacy and security white papers. And although those papers were well received, everyone said, okay, now what? So what? we've read it, but how do we put these principles in practice? And so in conversation, really these conversations have kind of really taken off since October, where there's been validation from and questions from organizations who want to know, how can we show support of the ethical principles? How can we train our staff on the ethical principles? How can we assess internally where we are? And so that really is kind of foundational to the program. So we are developing within this framework training courses. The initial training courses are offered via the Linux Foundation platform, use edX platform. So training courses to help explain the ethical principles, what can be done, what do we mean with it, and how can individuals support those principles. And then future looking additional courses, perhaps executive training courses, and we can probably talk about that, tied to Project Voice that's coming up. So serving as an education and advocacy organization to help those within organizations learn about the principles and how to apply them. One of the other pillars of that is the self-assessment checklist and maturity model based on the principles, going through an exercise of evaluating where they are and then being able to provide them with guidance of, okay, this is where you are, these are the steps to move further along the continuum of maturity towards support of these principles. So I think it's important for me to say we are not in an organization to be able to certify organizations. That's not our role, but we do, and there are organizations who are interested in providing their employees with a badge of we completed, or a logo saying we completed this training courses. So consider, for example, all the other Linux Foundation courses where you get kind of certificates, badge of completing courses. And then from a organizational standpoint, going through the self-assessment of where they are, and to be able to say, have again a tag of we support and we are in line with the Open Voice Network ethical principles, ethical guidelines. And again, another way for them to show their support, opt in, that they are interested and they want to show the rest, in some cases vendors, in other cases some of their customers, and internally they want to be able to utilize this as a way to advance ethical principles within their companies.
So education, communication, advocacy or communication,
Yes.
Naming the principles, defining them, making us all aware.
Yes.
But it's not certification, colleagues, my friends. It's not validation. Open Voice Network's not going to be doing any auditing.
Yes.
But getting the word out and taking that first step of asserting this. And I'll speak on Oita's behalf that she and her team, a great team, has gone through over the past several years. There's a volume of ethical AI literature. There's no shortage of white papers and documents on ethical AI. But now applying that to voice and conversational AI is a step that's been taken here. And some other further steps, Oita mentioned their educational course being offered through the Linux Foundation, but you're also putting together an advisory board. Oita, just speak to that for a moment, if you would.
Yes, we will be announcing the members of the advisory board on the 29th. They will be highlighted on the website, but we are looking for industry leaders reaching out for those who can help advance our work and to provide counsel. For example, I won't mention name, but I will mention the relationship is there is one organization who's already implemented an ethical self-assessment internally within their organization. They have a very rich framework of educational courses, the assessment, resources, and just general help. And so having someone who can bring that experience of actually implementation to our work is important. Legal, we had a question this morning in Ethical Use Task Force as we were going through the questions is, are we going to have legal review of this to make sure that we're in line? It's like, of course we're going to, so we'll have the advice from those, and then others who are in the education space and communication marketing space who can help us get the message out and advance our work there. So great group of people bringing together to provide guidance and support.
2 dates put on your calendars. On Wednesday, the 29th of March, 2 weeks from today, at the same time will be the launch webinar of the TrustMark initiative. So again, Wednesday, the 29th, same time. Then in late April, the Open Voice Network and Oita and the TrustMark initiative will be present and active at Project Voice 23 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. As led by Bradley Metrock and Score Publishing, Bradley is putting together what he has termed and has announced as the Conversational AI Leadership Council. And the members of this council, enterprise decision makers, digital transformation executives, and the like, addressing issues of ethics and proper use of data, proper protection of privacy, and following the principles enunciated by the TrustMark initiative and the Open Voice Network Ethical Use Task Force. It's a great step forward for us, a very exciting step, I think, for the industry. So again, March 29th will be the webinar launching the TrustMark initiative. Please, if you can, open your schedules for that, join us and register. And then in late April, it'll be on the I had those dates and I just forgot them. 23rd, 24th, and 25th,
Yes, right.
in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Voice people will be gathering, and again, taking a look at the principles enunciated by the TrustMark initiative of the Open Voice Network. Let's go ahead and open the mics. Nathan, and just any comments and questions here on the TrustMark initiative, and as we begin to wrap up.
Yeah, I was going through chat myself to seeing if there were any questions or thoughts also to follow up on.
Any questions from anyone, or comments, insights on the TrustMark initiative?
Hi there, this is Anais Rameau. I'm a laryngologist, and I'm also part of the Bridge to AI initiative with the NIH. And so our group is involved in creating a data generation project for voice related to health. And I was wondering if the training you're going to offer, Oita, is also going to be tailored towards health tech organizations that are also looking into determining risk factors for disease.
The initial course that we're working on now is more of an introductory course, but we do envision that there will be other courses, and I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you, because this will be something that we can do in conjunction with the health and wellness group within the Open Voice Network, is to see, are there kind of industry specific topics, training courses that we can put together. So I would love to follow up with you, and I will be at that Voice Symposium, sponsored by Bridge to AI next month as well, and would love to find some time for us to brainstorm and figure out what that could look like. But I do think other courses that are practical and that people can relate to and that will move things forward would be very beneficial to have.
Dr. Rameau, we are, the Open Voice Network is also soon to publish a white paper on the use of voice in remote patient monitoring and management, and the issues you raise in regards to data collection and data use, biomarker analysis, as well as biometric identification are part of that paper. And so we'd also welcome kind of a triangulation from the health team within the Open Voice Network with Oita, with you, and at that conference. So many things to discuss, and would be delighted to do so.
Sure, looking forward to it. And we also have bioethicists as part of our team, so I think we can really work well together.
That'd be great.
That'd be
That'd
great.
be great.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Let me just say thank you. Thank you for your time. Oita, thank you for being under the spotlight here today, but thank you for your questions, your comments, and most of all, your support of the Open Voice Network. You make a difference. And again, this is the first of what we anticipate will be many sessions of doing our best to return that value back to you. So again, with our appreciation and our thanks to Oita, may you have a great day, and we look forward to the next time. Thanks so much.